Hello, friends, and welcome back to Daily Assurance. It is, again, a privilege to join you in this space, and we're thankful that you're here today. This morning, I was thinking about a story, and I wanted to share it with you. It's a little funny, but also has a good spiritual connection as well. As many of you know, or even if you don't know me, I grew up racing lots of things. I grew up racing motorcycles, and in my early adulthood transitioned to racing bicycles, and did that regularly for about 6 years. But I was reminded this morning of a story about my first race, the very first bicycle race that I ever participated in. I had been riding for about 5 months and was still very new to being on a road bike and being in close quarters with other people. It was exhilarating, and I loved it. I became really accustomed to being in those tight groups of people flying around city blocks lined with spectators cheering and yelling. It was wonderful. I've had the privilege of racing in downtown Charleston and in Charlotte and in Johnson City, Tennessee, and all over the Southeast. Some really beautiful and exciting opportunities. But my very first race was a little different. It was in Greenville, South Carolina, and was around kind of an industrial park. The length of the race was about 21 miles or so, and it was the longest race that I had obviously ever done, as it was my first one. And in that time, I was not yet skilled enough to eat while I was on the bike. Now, if you are a runner or a cyclist or have ever participated in any kind of sport, you know that nutrition is wildly important. It's important to eat well before, during, and even after the event. The body needs that energy as we exert these unusual or abnormal amounts of strength or energy. But at that point, I was not good enough to eat while I was riding. I was scared, and so I didn't eat for the entire race. I barely drank anything and was really excited that I had maintained my position with the main group. This was exciting and far better than I had ever anticipated being. But within the last, 200, 300 yards of the race, my body gave up. I watched that group pull away and cross the finish line without me. And I was sad, but I was in too much pain to be sad. I remember crossing the finish line. I turned into a parking lot and made it back to my car where some of my friends had gathered. And that's the last thing I remember. I passed out right there in the middle of the parking lot. My body was so depleted of nourishment that I just passed out. My sugar crashed. I was dehydrated. It was ugly. But that reminded me of how much our body needs nourishment, and not just physically, but we also need spiritual nourishment. And it connected me to a very familiar prayer that we pray. In fact, it was the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray. And he said, when you pray like this: Our Father who is in heaven, uphold the holiness of your name. Bring in your kingdom, so that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day the bread that we need. Give us this day our daily bread. You know that prayer. It's the Lord's Prayer. But I invite you to think about for a moment what we're saying when we pray that. And I invite all of us to pray that this day. We're asking God to give us the bread, the things of nourishment. Give us what we need today for today. God knows what we need. God knows where we have needs spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. And God will give us that. And so we pray, give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And so this day, dear friends, whatever it is that you need, God will give it to you. may we pray this day for our daily bread. Have a great rest of your day wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We'll see you tomorrow for Daily Assurance.